Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Al's Joint. Me and my co-host Dennis Painter will delve into the Venezuela invasion and the kidnapping of their president and first lady. We'll also update you on the Epstein file. But now we have to enjoy one of the greatest bands of all time. Let's pay homage to the Temptations and Ain't Too Proud to Beg. So let's take the gloves off and let's get at it. Hello there, partner. Here we go. Another round of madness. It never changes in this administration. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, except for all the insanity that I see in the Trump administration.
And like we said at the end of last week's podcast, we'll wait and see what madness comes this week. And sure enough, as always, we're right. Trump decided to invade Venezuela and kidnap the president and his wife and bring them back to the United States. And I don't want to hear anybody say that he was captured, because he wasn't running from anybody. He was the president of a nation, and you don't capture the president of another nation who hasn't been found guilty of anything. It's not like he had a trial here. He was found guilty and he fled. We don't even know if they even said, hey, we want to put you on trial. We can either do it the hard way or the easy way. Even if it's on an international court. There was a lot of other options. One thing I did do, I was doing some research on costs, and they're estimated that from the beginning of this exercise, moving those ships down, that they spend between 1.5 and $2 billion. That's how much it costs to fake like you're going to war before you actually do it. Between 1.5 and $2 billion. But guess what? Guess how much it costs to pardon the Honduras narco terrorist drug dealer Juan Hernandez? It didn't cost us a penny. So you $2.2 billion to get one drug dealer, and it costs zero to let another one go free.
Well, I would say one alleged drug dealer, because he hasn't had his day in court yet. Maduro has been president of Venezuela since 2013, been reelected twice. Now, there's been all kinds of, things said about the elections. They were fixed and that type of thing. But the bottom line is he's been there since 2013 as their leader. And what else is going on that I see is, how does this look to the rest of the world? The rest of the world is condemning what's happening. But what Trump could do is accuse any world leader of anything, and then in his mind, he can go in and capture that person and bring them to the United States. Now, all of this allegedly started that, oh, we're going to stop the drugs, and he bombed all those boats. But before he did that, he moved into warships and aircraft carriers. You don't do that to bomb little boats. He was planning this all along. And he's been back and forth. It's been, oh, well, it's stop the drug cartel. And then it's with regime change. And then it's the oil. Then it's back to the regime change. He's all over the place with it. Bottom line is he's trying to control, the world, in my opinion. I'm concerned about what it's doing to our alliances with other countries in NATO, because he's done a lot of damage, and he's unleashed with no one pulling him back, no one saying, hey, look, you're going too far. You can't just go into another country and just capture people who haven't been, found guilty or charged with anything, especially the leadership. If Putin was to come in and do that, and take Trump back to Russia, what do you think would happen? We would condemn it. I'm really concerned about it. And then you got to figure out, what is Trump really thinking? And since he's all over the place. And I did a little research, and some people say it's oil, some people say it's regime change, and I'm really not sure, other than I know that Trump wants to leave his mark as being, powerful, big man. But if you look at um, the top 5 countries on this planet that have the largest oil reserves. Venezuela is number 1 with oil reserves. Then there's Saudi Arabia, Iran, Canada, and Iraq. That's the top 5. Now, we've been at war with Iran and Iraq, all right, and now Venezuela. And Trump's talking about annexing, which is another word for stealing, Canada and Greenland. And of course, Canada is the number 4 oil reserves in the world, and Greenland is for the minerals. And they've been saying that we want the minerals out of Greenland. But now they're going to say it's for security. They'll make up all kinds of reasons, but it won't be for money. And that's what I believe it's all about. When they invaded and captured Maduro, one of the first things he said, we're going to run the country and we're going to go in and fix the infrastructure of the oil and extract that oil. So,
Well, a couple of things. One, because I have another twist to that, right? I think that part of the plan all along through, at least in Rubio's mind, Rubio has been either Cuban American. His father was a Cuban dissident and who hated Castro and fought to try to overthrow the Castro regime for decades. And Rubio was groomed to fight Cuba. And that's his dream. And majority of their oil comes from Venezuela. So if you choke off, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You can take over that reserve in Venezuela, and you can cause more damage to Cuba. They want to take over Cuba. And I heard the hot mic that was on Lindsey Graham, where he's saying what all the things he was going to do with Cuba. Can you imagine hearing from a Russian or another individual from another country what they're going to do with America when they take it over? Because to me, I want folks to think, what's the difference between what we did and what terrorists do? Right? If you look, I'm going to ask folks to do your own research. Go on YouTube and quit looking at only American news, because American news is only going to tell you so much because they're afraid of this administration. So you're never going to get the whole truth. Go look at what they're talking about in the rest of the world. It's easy to pull up if you go on YouTube or you do other research. The damage that they've done in Venezuela has left a lot of folks dead. And Trump said that they knew we were coming. That makes no sense. How can you say we have a covert mission that we didn't want to tell the Congress about, but they already knew we were coming? If they knew you were coming, you might have well told the American people. So either he's stupid or he's lying. And I think he's lying. I don't think they knew they were coming. So everybody that you killed, you decided that they had to die so you can spend that $2 billion to capture the president and then try to claim it was for other reasons. And if you do go further into the research, you'll see that the reason why Venezuela and Cuba and some of the other South American countries are in disarray is because of some of the actions of the United States and some of the other imperialistic countries that they decided to keep the embargoes to the point where your economy was going to suffer. Then they blame the person in charge because they want the country to pull a coup and take them out of power so we can replace them with who we want there that'll be obedient to the United States. Because if Venezuela has all those resources and oil, they would be booming just like the other OPEC nations are, right? But the fact that the United States wants them to fail, they set it up where they strangle them, and then they say, look, it's your leader. And it's not, the leader has all type of resources. What leader with that many resources wouldn't have this country booming?
well, if you go back and look at it, and I think on the thing between your analysis of Cuba and Venezuela, I'm not going to dispute that, because I think for Trump, it's a total power grab wherever he can go. But if you look at the production of oil okay, and the very fact that the sanctions that was put in place hurt those countries. At one point, Venezuela was putting out 2.5 billion barrels of oil every day. And in the last year, it was under 1 billion barrels a day. Okay. That was because they were being choked. Now, the other concern I have is, I mean, this could escalate far beyond Venezuela and Cuba because Russia's getting involved here. We're boarding tankers and taking tankers that were either Russian tankers or flying Russian flags. So I think people need to look at, yeah, America has a strong army, but we shouldn't overplay it. That's where we make mistakes. And I think that we're overplaying it. And whether it's for oil, whether it's for power, whether it's for Rubio, overthrowing or taking control of Cuba, so he can get a foothold into the White House in the next election. It's concerning. Everything is concerning. And I don't think that all of this put together, that Trump's joking. I think that he wants to annex Canada. I think he wants because they're number 4 in oil production. It's money. It's simply money. It's not freedom. It's not going to improve our lives. Our soldiers, our brothers and sisters, and our children and grandchildren are going to die for the power of having money. And I think they're serious about taking Greenland. Now, if they take over Greenland, we'll completely destroy our relationship with NATO. Now, they're saying, well, we're not going to move military in right now, but we're going to try to use diplomacy first. That was as of yesterday.
I think that people should understand, and I'm not talking to the MAGA cult members, right? Because it doesn't matter what they do, how many people they kill, they're going to find some way to excuse it, right? It doesn't matter what Trump says after he does something either. He actually admitted that it was all about the oil. We're going to take over. They're still out there, the talking heads, the MAGA folks. If you look at some of their stuff on the internet, they're saying, "Oh, well, he was a drug dealer. We had to stop their drugs." You do realize that your leader is making you look stupid, because after you get out there and you're saying that, he turns around and says, "No, it was about the oil, and we're going to keep it, and I'm going to control it. They're going to give me money since I'm the president. I get to decide where the money goes." He actually does that. Rubio, the MAGA talking heads, they were all out there looking like asses, right? Because
Well,
they're out there with one message, and he just turned around and said, "No, that's not true."
if MAGA would spend as much time listening as they do trying to defend
Defending.
possible and do their own research, maybe some of them would realize they're being played for an idiot. Now, let's look at what Trump is saying about Venezuela now. We're going to rebuild their oil infrastructure, but we're going to get repaid for it. Now, it's going to be like Mexico paying for the border wall. We got paid for that, right? No, we're not going to get paid, but people are going to buy into that BS. Trump saying, "Oh, it's not going to cost us anything." Well, like you pointed out, it's the military actions already cost $2 billion. Okay. Venezuela was not threatening us. Venezuela was not pushing the drugs towards the United States. It's not the problem. If Trump was serious about drugs, number one, he would use the troops, the National Guard in the U.S. to go after the drug cartel in the United States of America. Number two, he would not have pardoned the biggest drug king in the world that was bringing drugs into the United States. He would use our troops for that. And he would have, since he's already went into Venezuela and capturing Maduro, he would have gone after the drug cartel. He has not done that. MAGA folks do look stupid. I mean, they absolutely are stupid because they are so busy defending, Trump. They're not looking at the picture. They're not looking at everything, and they're entrenched.
Still go back to the pardoning of Honduras drug kingpin who pumped twice as much drugs in the United States during his term, Juan Hernandez, that was pardoned. And what did Trump say? They treated him like they treated me. So what does that mean? That he was a drug dealer too and we didn't know about it? He felt bad for it. I'm trying to figure out. That makes no sense. It doesn't matter though. It doesn't matter to the MAGA folks. It doesn't matter that he pardoned criminals and everybody. They're talking about what's happened in Minnesota, but he just pardoned a gentleman who had defrauded employees and folks in nursing homes. I think 40 million bucks, and he got pardoned. He's only in jail for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. What
and
happened
and
to getting rid of fraud and abuse? I mean, what he's doing is he's giving pardons to people like him. That's what he's doing. I mean, he understands, a crook. The Honduras president, he said, well, he was treated unfairly. He didn't have a legal argument. He was treated unfairly.
And look, they do the comparison. They say Trump's a gangster. Trump's not a gangster. Every gangster boss that you know earned his bones in the streets, right? He was known for doing everything to get himself to that position. Trump's been a punk and a coward his whole life. He dodged everything except where he can try to use his name to get ahead. Other than that, he's been a little loudmouth punk that nobody ever took serious until he happened to get lucky and catch I call it the underdraft in this country that was hidden for too long, and he rode that into the White House.
Right. Well, people want to defend him, and he's a five-time I got bone spurs draft dodger, and they don't want to talk about that. They want to wave the American flag and we're brave and this and that. But you're right. Trump, when I was growing up, and I said this on one other podcast, Trump is the kind of person when we were in the school, we called him snot-nosed punk. I doubt that he's ever been in a fight in his life where he physically was the one had to do it. Now, he's using his daddy's name, and he's used his daddy's money to get where he's at. He didn't make that money. He got billions of dollars from his daddy. He was born into money, and he's intimidated people all his life and bullied people to get more money. And just like all the lawsuits, that's his way. I'll hire somebody and I'll bully somebody and I'll make my money that way.
Now, I want folks to make sure they pay attention this next week because you mentioned earlier about the oil ship that they're chasing and that they're flying a Russian flag. If Russia doesn't do anything about that, it's going to confirm what my fears were that there was a deal brokered. All those meetings that Trump had with Putin, there was a deal. We take Venezuela, we take Cuba, and you take Ukraine.
I agree with you 100% on that, Al, but I think it's larger than that. I think we'll take South America and you can have Europe. Putin can have Europe because Putin's not going to be satisfied with Ukraine. All right. He's trying to put together the USSR and make it larger. And Europe understands that. They know what he's up to. And you don't spend hours, and I'm talking about what Trump himself has said, hours on the phone with Putin about Ukraine and end up with nothing but something that's beneficial for Russia and will destroy Ukraine and Europe. He's a real estate dealer, and the real estate he's dealt with or dealing with Putin is Europe and South America.
I agree with you. I just
He's not.
think that if you take Venezuela and the oil and Cuba, you have South America.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that on the Western Hemisphere, they're saying, look, you do what you got to do over there. We'll deal with this. We'll leave China with the rest in the third part of the world. So it's gonna get ugly before it gets better. I'm just hoping that the American people are ready to take back the House and the Senate and to make sure we can stop this madness before it becomes irreversible. Because one of the things I think happened, though, I think all this was a plan. And the reason why it's so scatterbrained, because they had to rush it and expedite it. They're thinking, okay, we're going to methodically be there. And somewhere during the end of year two, after the midterms, going into year three, we make our move. But the Epstein files, it continued to throw a wrench in all the Project 25 plans. It makes everything get expedited. And when you expedite stuff, you're sloppy. It gets revealed to the American people before you expected it to. So folks need to understand you're seeing what their plan was, but you're seeing it move at a pace where they can't stay out of their own way and minimize the mistakes that they probably wouldn't have made if they had a chance to methodically go through it.
Well, it's being magnified because of the Epstein files. They're rushing it. I don't care what happens. The Epstein files are going to follow the Republican Party and Trump, for years to come. They're not going to get away from that. The unfortunate thing is they're going to, in the process, kill people or have people killed and try to destroy our democracy and many things we've built for centuries. And I'll be surprised if Trump allows the midterms. He's going to say there's some type of crisis and he's going to postpone the midterms. Because once that happens, and if everything is correct that you and I are reading about where the voters are, there will be a Democratic majority in both the House and the Senate. And they're going to deal with him, and for a variety of reasons, but they will deal with him. And part of it's the same thing as that he set himself up like the Epstein files. Well, the Democratic Party is going to have to deal with that. Okay. All right. They've set themselves up. They can't back down now,
Yeah, this is true. Now, the thing that scares me is that if you create World War III, right, and it doesn't mean that the typical boots on the ground war is when everybody now they'll be fighting economically, right? There'll be some firepower shed, but a lot of it'll be how do they fight, kill each other's economy. That's to me, the new war, the way the war will be fought from this point on. That when that happens, even being a pedophile is like low on the list of what people are looking at, right? Because everything's in chaos. And I think that's what he's trying to create by these diversions. I'm going to create such a diversion, so many diversions on top of each other that the Epstein file seems less and less serious. I believe that's what he's trying to do, and it's having some effect. We got to make sure that we keep that on the front burner. And I think that's what some of the newscasts are doing, but the other ones are just, they run for whatever the next shining ball is, right? If he knows nothing else, this administration knows how to keep the media running around like the chickens with their head chopped off.
Well, the other side of it is, and I told you, I watched CBS the other night and I was disappointed. They're just another version of Fox now, in my opinion, the way they're reporting. And I have no respect for that network because they're running away from the real news. And so, America's going to have to depend on podcasts like this to get their information. They have to look outside of the U.S. To news media to get the truth because the other countries are reporting the truth. I mean, it's what happened in Venezuela is against international law. Okay. Our bombing of the boats, regardless of the reason, those little fishing boats was against international law. We broke the law. Now I say we, under Trump's orders, broke the law. And the other countries know that. And they're talking about it. But the only way that the majority of Americans are going to hear it is they're going to have to get a news agency outside of this country. Now, that doesn't mean to go to just one news agency, go to multiple ones. Hear multiple versions if you need to. and then go to the ones in America. Form an opinion based off of information. Don't be like MAGA folks with your head in the sand and your butt up in the air because everything we see of MAGA folks is going to be their ass, okay? Sticking up in the air.
I look at it a different way. I look at it that the only thing you can see is their shoulders because their heads stuck up Trump's ass so far. To me, anybody who was a part of the Trump pedophile club, they deserve all the insults they can get because for some reason, if you read some of these comments on the internet, they just make it seem like this never happened. They make it seem like the Epstein files don't exist, that there's two different worlds. It's the MAGA world, right? That small group that in that bubble, and there's everybody else in the world. Let's think about this for a minute. You're a prosecutor and you come to court and you have a million pieces of evidence, and then you tell the judge, we need more time because we just found another 3 million pieces of evidence that we got to go through. That judge is going to look at you and say you're incompetent and kick you out of their courtroom. This is so methodically intentional that they're like, we're just going to drag this thing out and play games because we know that if those files are out, they're going to see Donald Trump on airplanes. They're going to see Donald Trump on Epstein's Island. They're going to see Melania Trump on Epstein Island. And there's actually information in one of the files that said his daughter and his son was on the planes with Epstein too. That to me is the reason why that he knows it's not just going to be him. And when you include everybody in that Epstein cult, it just really takes away your ability to argue. We didn't know what he was doing. I kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago after 10 years of being best buddies because I found out he was weird.
No, well, that ain't gonna happen. But you look at, they were supposed to turn over all the files according to the law, December the 19th, 2025. They haven't done that. They've turned over less than 1%. And I did a little bit of math. It's just a little over 0.5% of what they've turned over. Now, they say they have over 2 million more documents, over 5 million pages. They have 400 attorneys they've hired to go through that. The way I look at it, at the pace that they're going, it's going to take 5 or 6 years to get through all of it if a judge allows that. If they don't, they're just going to go through and redact every single page, and what you're going to get is nothing. I saw a thing from Annie Farmer. Her sister was 12 years old. Epstein was taking nude photos of her at 12 years old. He was violating Annie Farmer. The FBI had proof of that in 1996, and they did nothing. And it tells me the level that the FBI, and I'm going to say the CIA too, and the Republican Party will go to protect the leadership in this country. And I don't think we should. I don't care if it's the Democratic Party. I don't care if it's the Republican Party. I don't care if it's rich. I don't care if they're poor. If they violate a child, they need to go to prison. And they need to suffer the consequences of their actions. And the FBI sitting on that for over 20 years or more. It's not the fact that they didn't do their job in the terms of analyzing it. They knew what they had. It was plain. They had the evidence. They just didn't do it because of who it was.
Yeah, that was during Clinton's term, like you said. He needs to rot in hell too. So
Absolutely.
it doesn't, like you said, I don't care if it's a Democrat, Independent, Republican, if they're a part of this, they need to all rot in hell. They need to serve time. They need to be brought up in charges. And we need to figure out what other victims are out there so we can make sure they get help. Who knows how many of these young girls took their own lives? We'll never know until we do an investigation, because if they never told and they did harm to themselves or just ruined their lives, I can't even begin to think what something like that would do to a young person, male or female. I have no clue whatsoever, but it would have to be devastating to think that you weren't protected and that you were violated repeatedly and threatened and was too ashamed to have to walk around with all that inside of you for years.
Not only were these people sexually assaulted, they were also physically assaulted in the way of being beaten. Epstein beat one girl because she gave her virginity at 13 to Donald Trump. That was reported. Now, why isn't Donald Trump arrested?
The reason why in that particular lawsuit, the statute of limitation ran out for the crime, not for the civil case. So, but he still became president. And here's something that's important for the public to understand. Your legislators knew that. Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, they knew that. They never factored that into whether they should support a pedophile or not. That information was available to them. Now, they might have turned a blind eye or decided I'm not going to read any further because I don't want to have to deal with what I find out. But that information was out there and available. And everybody who read that information, was privy to that information and didn't do anything, they're just as guilty as Trump and Clinton. Because I do believe that there's too many pictures of Clinton to think that he's not intertwined in that cult.
Look, two things. One is I believe the allegations against Bill Clinton are true. I believe the allegations against Epstein are true. I believe the allegations against Trump are true. I believe those things. But even more, if I had the evidence and I read to the point where I didn't want to know anymore and I stopped reading, I'm more guilty than the rest of them. Okay. And then the people that did read portions of or all of what's going on and knew all of it or a portion of it and did nothing, they are just as guilty, as you said. And the Republican Party knows this. They know that Trump is guilty. That's why they fought so hard to keep the Epstein files from being made public. And they were worried about the midterms that they said, we got to release it. Now, they're releasing them at such a pace that the midterms will be passed. Now, so far, they spent $2 million for these 400 attorneys to go through these files. So our tax money, and that's, 5 weeks? No, it's less than 5 weeks. $2 million. Now, attorneys don't work for free and they don't work cheap. And so how much money is this intentional delay by the Department of Injustice going to cost the American public?
Just to repeat what you said, those folks who knew and didn't do anything are more guilty. Trump didn't think he was doing anything wrong raping them 13-year-old girls. If you showed him a picture, a video, he would say, that's not me. That video's fake, or she wanted it. He would change the narrative to make himself the victim. That's what happens when you're sick and you're soulless. But the other folks who knew, you're more guilty than the perpetrators.
Well, have you heard what I heard is that Trump is saying now that, well, there's other people named Trump, So, I mean,
there are because he probably had his son there with him.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so when they say Donald Trump, we don't know which Donald Trump did which when. They both were involved.
This is how much Trump cares about protecting our children and stopping sex trafficking of underage girls and boys and men and women. He has abandoned and taken funds away from the organizations that tracked those sex traffickers down. And he's refunneled that money into the ISIS. He's also taken money out of the organizations that were used to track down drug traffickers in the United States of America. And he's put that money towards ISIS. So he does not care about either one. He doesn't care about the sex trafficking of young girls or boys. He's defunded that, and he doesn't care about the drugs that's being peddled in the United States of America that's destroying a portion of our population. If he did, he'd put more money to it. He wouldn't have abandoned those groups that prosecute them.
And let me
So
tell you something I never hear from MAGA. When I say, I very seldom say never. I'm telling you, I have never heard one person from MAGA, whether it was on the internet or any other talk shows, any of the talking heads say, let's form a task force to go and find these lost children and fight these pedophile rings. I've never heard them say that. They'll jump right, hey, let's get ICE in there and let's get rid of the brown people who haven't done anything, but have not once have I heard them say, let's take that money, let ICE do both. Then ICE will have
right,
my support. We're going
yeah,
to look for the criminals and we're going to look for the folks who are trafficking these young ladies, these little girls, and we're going to put an end to it. You know, that doesn't happen because when the president who hires you and the head of your agency is a pedophile, that's not something you want to talk about. Not if you're MAGA. You want to just brush it under the rug and act like you're holier than thou.
it doesn't speak well for us either as a country if we're not pushing to have those funds reinstated and stop that sex trafficking in the country. And you and I are doing it. There's other organizations that are doing it. You know how I am. I've talked about this a number of times. These alleged righteous, moral people aren't saying a damn thing. They're not speaking up. And that in itself is assisting the exploitation of underage girls and boys. It's something that they need to do. Some of them might be, but not Erica. Not Erica Kirk. She's not
And
speaking up.
and Charlie Kirk never spoke on it. Charlie
Yeah.
Kirk never came on and said we have to find who's abusing all these young girls and we got to put a stop to it. I guess maybe they thought when they went to heaven that they could just walk in and nobody would ask that question of them. The hell were you doing while you were down there? What makes you think you get entrance here? If
Yeah.
we can't protect our kids, then this country needs to look at itself in the mirror.
I made a comment on this podcast that someone in my family saw, and that individual is religious. And he got in touch with me and said, I'm really, really concerned about you because of my comments about Charlie Kirk and Turning Point. Now, of course, I said, it's sad that he was killed, but if he was really a Christian, he would have done something about these underage girls being trafficked, and at least he would have spoken up and spoken out about it. So the individual, the family member, I said, I'll talk to you about it, but I want to do it face to face. And we did. And I'm not an expert on the Bible, okay? There's people that use the Bible for excuses. But there's people that believe if I go to church on Sunday and ask for forgiveness, I can go do what I want on Monday. And I told this individual, what Jesus said was, you're forgiven. Go and sin no more. And these people that think they're going to get into the gates of heaven because over and over again they look the other way, or over and over they've committed the same sin, ain't going to happen because the sin's in their heart. Now, the other point I want people to think about is you have all these people that are supporting Trump, not saying a word about this sex trafficking. They live in your community. There's young boys and girls in your community. Are they pedophiles? Are your children safe? Okay. They are not saying a word. They're taking up for a pedophile. They're protecting a pedophile. And they could be living right next door to you. You need to send a strong message. My children are going to be protected, and sex trafficking is wrong.
And folks should also know that they say that 2 out of every 3 children who are molested will molest other children when they're older. So if we don't stop this vicious cycle, your child may get molested by somebody that had you done something, had you stood up, maybe you could have stopped that child in your neighborhood from being molested and growing up to do it. Or they don't even wait till they're grown. They'll most likely have their first incident or commit their first crime when they're teenagers because they're screwed up. So we have an obligation to stop this and make sure not only we stop it and stop the people from doing it, but we get folks help who are victims. I want to move on. I want to make sure we touch base on the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection and how Trump pardoned all these criminals. And you had mentioned on other podcasts, you had done some research that a lot of these folks that he pardoned committed other felonies, not other crime, not speeding tickets, right? Not failure to pay a fine in court, felonies, some vicious felonies. So they were felons when they were there. The only thing they did after they got out was continued to be who they were.
That's correct. And there were several that were rearrested after they were pardoned by Trump for molesting women or young girls. And one was arrested for molesting and raping a 7-year-old. Now, another was arrested for killing a police officer. So when you pardon criminals, what do you think's going to happen? They believe with Trump in office, they can go and do whatever they want to do because Trump's going to pardon them. And this celebration of January 6th is a terrible thing. That was a terrible, dark moment in our country. And Trump believes in the rule of law and all this other crap that he's trying to get us to believe. He sat for hours on January 6th and did nothing. Didn't try to stop them, didn't try to help them. And in fact, he incited them. And I don't know if you've heard this, but he's now saying that happened because of the Democrats. The Democrats were the cause of that.
The only thing that I regret not having happened, that some of those folks should have been shot. You heard it from me. You're in the middle of a insurrection, committing felonies, threatening to kill people. Some of those folks would have been shot. The only door that wasn't breached was the door that when somebody got shot, all of a sudden they decided to go find another entrance. I don't know any other group of folks. I'm just being honest. If that mob were people of color, there'd probably have been 100 to 200 casualties. And you know what I would have said? That's good. Your ass shouldn't have been there. For them to be able to commit that type of attack on the Capitol, and it was only one casualty of the rioters, I'll never understand how that happened. But I'll tell you what, I'll bet you if they do it again, I'll bet you they'll get shot. They did a peaceful march this time. Had they done that last time, they would have never got pardoned, needed to get pardoned, or they wouldn't have been in jail. It just showed they know how to protest peacefully, even though I think of course, it was hypocritical, but they know how to do it. Their intent was to me, I honestly believe that if anybody understands the game mentality, you will do things that you would never even think of doing individually. And had they found one of those Democratic lawmakers or Mike Pence, they would have killed Mike Pence. And people that don't understand that mob, to do what they did and breach the Capitol as viciously as they did, do you think when they found who they were looking for, they were just going to shout at him? If they'd have found him or Nancy Pelosi or any other Democratic lawmaker, somebody was going to die.
Right. And if you look at the mentality and this is the message that Trump put out then, and this is the message he put out now, when he called all the top generals in from all around the world into Washington, D.C., and he told them, we're changing the rules. Or they spit, you hit. And so he's saying attack, Americans if they do something. Now, he didn't do that on January 6th because they were doing
his bidding.
His part. Yeah. And if that occurs again and they're fighting for him, he won't do anything. But let peaceful protesters, get up and say, we're against something that you're doing. Okay. He's going to have the National Guard out, and it's going to get to the point where somebody's, going to spit, and then there's going to be bloodshed. And I live in Ohio, just, Kent State's just north of here. Okay. So it happens, and that's unfortunate. It happens. If they're defending something that's illegal that Trump did, and they kill somebody, he's going to pardon them. And the message he's sending by pardon all these criminals is, hey, I got you in my back pocket. I might need you to do something. Now, you and I know we've been in the labor movement. And the history of the labor movement, we would have peaceful demonstrations. And I'm going back to the 20s and 30s, where the Pinkertons, if you did the history, there was bombs thrown and it was blamed on labor organizations having a peaceful demonstrations. Now, why would we throw a bomb in our own demonstration? Okay, but labor leaders got arrested and got hanged. So that's not unlikely in this day and time. If you don't have violence, create violence, and that's what I think will happen in the future.
And just to finish this off, and I'll give you the last word. Trump told them that he walked with them, and the coward that he is went back in the comfort of the White House and watched those folks in the cold go and commit those attacks on our democracy. So it just goes to show you he's always been a coward. He's going to continue to be a coward. You can talk all you want, all the tough talk you want. One of the things he does have, though, he convinces other cowards and other losers that no matter what you do in this country, look at me. I'm a loser, a grifter, a felon, a pedophile, a rapist, and I can still get away with everything. So he gives them hope that as long as they're losers, they can do anything they want and they can still make it.
He gave America what they wanted, and that's a white America, and they're going back to the violence against people of color. He gave them what they wanted. They're going to continue to do that until he's out of office, and then we'll have damage control after that. It's going to take years and years to reverse what he's done.
Well, we come to the end of another episode, folks. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please don't forget to hit the share, like, and subscribe
This segment of Al's Joint is brought to you by JPAC Trucking.
Comments. I'm interested in what you're thinking. Unless you're a far right-wing nut, you already know. You don't give a damn what they think. So until next week, we continue this fight to keep this country out of the hands of those far right-wing MAGA nuts. Peace.